Hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live with myself. I am happy to be back after I think a couple of weeks off. Today, a fantastic, really excellent article from Ross Anderson on the story of OpenAI, and I shared this on a post, I believe last week. And I think this is one of the best articles to read if you're trying to get a sense of what is happening with generative AI. And I think the framing of this article, which I'm going to summarize here, but I'm going to encourage you to read, but I also just give you my takeaways because, of course, you can read the article. What are my takeaways from this? The framing of the article is really, really good because it looks at OpenAI as a company, interviewing Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and where OpenAI began, what was its intent, what was it doing, how it saw artificial intelligence, and looking at it through the employees at OpenAI in New Mexico and through interviews with Sam Altman. But it also around the core of looking at OpenAI is discussing the possibilities, the ramifications, the effects of generative AI in a way that's accessible. Because when we talk about generative AI, such as ChatGPT and other generative AI solutions that are out there, solutions or programs such as Google's Bard, it gets hard to really say, what does this mean for us? What are we looking at here? How does this work? What does the future hold? And those questions are still very difficult to answer. But I think this article at least tries to address some of the possibilities and does it around the narrative of how OpenAI came to be. And the story of OpenAI, which was founded by Sam Altman and also Elon Musk, was part of the original founding members of OpenAI, was a not-for-profit to really be untethered to corporate interest, at least at the beginning, to start looking at what could be artificial general intelligence, also known as strong AI. Can we have an intelligence with information given to a neural network for artificial intelligence where it looks at patterns and inferences, but starts to develop more complex responses, thoughts, products, showing creativity at a high level, almost a human level. And it went through its failures. GPT-4 is the engine, the neural network engine behind ChatGPT. But it documents how this process went and how everyone, the researchers, the programmers at OpenAI were looking at the, the the efforts to do something because they didn't want it to be just a sophisticated search engine like Google. They wanted it to really be able to learn and 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 to do things that were not just finding information that already exists, but really looking at providing ultimately new information from existing information, right? From a data source. And what was interesting is something I've talked about in the past. There are many seminal moments for OpenAI and ChatGPT, but ultimately it documents the path of how neural networks work and how natural process language works and how our language is actually one of the most important sources of information for us in terms of how we communicate and how we look at the world. And that information is rich and is probably the most valuable type of information you can give. And what I liked about the article is it looked at it as a metaphor. If you had an alien life form that came to Earth, and I'm just trying to make sure that my stream is working. It's working from my end, but hopefully it's also working from the internet's end. I cannot tell. I'm just going to keep going and hope that I am streaming okay because from my point of view, I'm looking all right. But you can let me know via the chat if there's any technical issues. But one of the metaphors that the article used, Ross Anderson, is that if an alien life tried to understand humanity and tried to understand our behaviors and how we think and how we how we process things and our behaviors, it would be through language. It would try to understand our language. And natural process languaging, the ability for an artificial intelligence to look at language and start to look at the patterns and inferences in language and interpret those and also learn from those, it was really the step forward for GPT-4. And it used some of the existing literature around natural process languaging, and then it started to give GPT-4 more language, and the language it ultimately gave it, where the source for the language was the internet, where there's just an infinite amount of information with humans, people writing, corresponding, Reddit, social media, anything. There's just an infinite amount of information, and from there, the real accelerant to GPT-4 and then ChatGPT was how the neural networks were able to process that information and learn and develop new pathways, neural networks, just like the brain, in understanding what it was seeing. And again, sometimes it gets things very wrong, but it's learning based on just a tremendous amount of information. So that was part of the story of OpenAI and where it really became something that we now use. And another part of it that I thought was really interesting is the decision to release ChatGPT to the world, which was, I think, a thought through decision. Part of that was at least Sam Altman's view, which I sometimes, I'm not sure how I don't want to say dishonest, but how much it really was the case that they wanted to release ChatGPT to just lessen the impact for people to say, here is something that's starting to look like artificial general intelligence. It's not artificial general intelligence, but it looks like it, and we want you to get ready for it. We want to prepare you because we're moving in this direction. And that was one of the reasons that ChatGPT was launched, at least from the viewpoint of Sam Altman. That was one of the reasons it was launched. And around this conversation of what ChatGPT represents is where are we going with this? And this is why I decided to spend more of my time in this space, because the more I read about this and I get more immersed in the subject of artificial general intelligence and generative AI, the more I agree that we are sort of on a precipice of technological revolution. Now, what this forbrings, I don't know. In that article, the article went into it, especially at the end of the article. What does this actually mean in terms of how people will use this? What does it mean for professional services like lawyers, engineers, accountants, and others, where we might see generative AI just do the same work? One of the examples was tutoring children, teaching children using generative AI software. And what does that mean for the teachers that we have today? And the real implications for the knowledge economy that a lot of us live in. And so I don't want to go through sort of the threat parts to it, but it's harder to ignore. I think sometimes with generative AI and AI solutions, we've said, yeah, this is interesting, but it's not this, it's not that. It makes this mistake. It's hallucinating. It's not. It's nice, but what is it going to do for me next? It's almost like a pet. We just got a dog, and hopefully it doesn't happen. But you teach a dog a few new tricks, and you're like, this is amazing. Then you're like, what more can it do? And you're always asking what's next for it, rather than sort of looking at what it can do. And that's natural, I think, with generative AI. Is yeah, I'm getting used to it. That's interesting, but what's next? But what's next is sort of underneath the surface of what the programmers at OpenAI and other software platforms, including Google and Apple and Microsoft, are really doing. The what's next is that they are giving these engines, these neural network engines, more ability to do things such as program. And potentially what it was looking at is maybe even start to move into the scientific theorems realm, develop its own scientific theory without much existing knowledge other than sort of other information around, how we live in our natural sciences. One of the examples in the article was, could generative AI reproduce or come to the same conclusion with Darwinism and human evolution? And it's possible, right? And so underneath all of this was a sense, even with the author of the article, that we don't know if OpenAI really understands what it's building here, and where this is going. It's, the concept might be that we're developing the car and we don't know exactly what it means for horses. If we think about our time before the automobile, we used horses as our most rapid form of transportation. And as we developed the automobile, the need for horses disappeared. But that analogy didn't seem to really capture what is happening in terms of the speed of how it's happening. And Sam Altman is sort of the center of this article, as sort of this person that's trying to describe both the moral implications of ChatGPT, but also the possibilities, and trying to thread the needle between, don't worry, the world's going to be a better place. We might all lose our jobs in professional services, but we'll find new jobs. We might cede a lot of our relationships to AI partners, but don't worry, those relationships will create better and new things. And the tenure of the article, and if you read it, you can always let me know, and give me your opinions. I definitely love to hear them. I thought was more on the, we don't know exactly what we're getting here. I mean, I think things are definitely going to move forward. I'm going to spend more time in this space because it is here, and I think it'd be difficult right now to ignore it and just to say, not just the parts that I've been focusing on with LinkedIn Live. I've been having this series where I start to use ChatGPT to see if it can assist my business, Sharif Consulting, and what I do. But we were almost moving, further along with this. And one of the parts of the article was this site that sort of is betting to when we will have general intelligence, almost sentient AI, kind of like the movies, where for years that I've been talking about AI, that it felt like it was way off. And in fact, that site had predicted sentient, strong AI to be potentially here in 2050, which relatively not that far off, but to me far enough off. Now with ChatGPT and some of the modeling that ChatGPT is doing and others, it's come a lot closer to the 2026, 2030 realm, which is a huge acceleration forward. Mm-hmm. And what we would look like if we had general intelligence. And really what general intelligence is that these softwares could do things that humans could do in terms of have a thought about an idea, like a real genuine idea, create a theorem, predict things that are part of the scientific realm, as an example. Even physics, predicting and creating theorems, producing scientific journals, doing research. This all didn't seem that plausible, and I've been speaking about AI for years. But this article just discusses that we're moving closer to that. So I think as a story, if you're looking at a way to appreciate the magnitude of what we're on here with generative AI, but also starting to think about where this is going, what are the people behind this, what do they see this as, like Sam Altman. And also one of the bigger challenges with this, which is the alignment problem. The alignment problem is that, will AI have the same value systems and ethical considerations as it comes to its own thought process as humans? And OpenAI has an alignment sort of team or department or whatever you want to call it, a part of OpenAI dedicated to really looking at AI alignment when it's producing its output. Is it an alignment to our values? And right now it's not strong AI, but I mean, you can use ChatGPT for good things, just like anything else. You can use it for bad things because it's not something that has a conscience yet. And I said yet dot dot dot. So we want to make sure that the outputs do its best not to lead humanity to a dark and dystopic future. And that's another part of this. And the book called The Alignment Problem by, I believe, Brian Christensen is a good book to read to just get a sense of what the alignment problem is and what researchers and programmers are trying to do to overcome it. So, just I'd highly recommend this article. I think it is a difficult time, I think, to just get your head around what's happening. Things are moving so quickly. I think one of the aspects that I took away from this is this is one of the most revolutionary technological developments in our time, but it's happened so quickly and it's progressing so rapidly that it's really hard to take it all in. It's really hard to get a perspective given the scope of this, and even for me who spends a lot of time with this, to say how could I articulate how massive this is and the possibilities and the uncertainty in the next few years. It's difficult. And I think this article was one of the best ones I've read to try to convey that sense of optimism, that sense of discovery, and learning about OpenAI's history and where we are with ChatGPT, but also that sense of we have a lot of questions around this, and looking at it from the point of view of Sam Altman was an interesting narrative device to get to some of those questions. So there's a lot of books, a lot of articles almost daily on what generative AI is doing. To me, this is one of the best ones I've read to just get into this and get some sense of what where are we, how do we get there, and where are we going? Not, which is again not something that I know for sure. So hopefully, from a technology point of view, talking about technology, that this came across the stream all right. But yes, I think going forward, it's almost I have to rebrand my LinkedIn Live because I think it's mainly going to be generative AI stuff from here on out, because there's a self-interest to me to talk about this, because if you ask me what I believe generative AI is going to change a lot of professional services dramatically. And that includes the world I work in as an auditor, as a CPA. And with any technology that might just kind of, and again, I don't want to use too much of uh, uh, hyperbolic language here. Uh, it has the potential, though, to really just change what we do in professional services. And there's a list, an article, that, or recent research that listed the types of professional services that were at risk from generative AI, which was things that we would normally have not thought of as risk in the intellectual community, such as the lawyers and engineers and human resources and CPAs and researchers and professors. And so, we can't necessarily stop that from happening, right? And part of this is there's going to be some resistance to saying, can this affect the way in which I monetize and utilize my knowledge that I've gained over all these years? And the answer might be yes. So what do you do with that? I think what you do is you try to figure out where the space is that you can carve out from that, and just be ready to go without being too alarmist, which is a fine needle to thread, I think. And that's what I'm going to try to do as I go into more LinkedIn Lives. But I think I'm going to end it here. if there's any takeaway from this LinkedIn Live, is to read that article. And as I said before in other LinkedIn Lives, it's just do your best to stay aware of what's happening. Things are moving so rapidly that every month there seems to be, and maybe even at a higher interval every week, there seems to be something that it has been produced that is on the branch of generative AI or AI solutions that your eyes just get big and you go, wow, that's really happening. It's just the speed of things. It's unbelievable how fast things are moving. Okay, the story of OpenAI. Highly recommend that. And I'm hoping again there weren't too many technical difficulties with LinkedIn Live because I see myself right now as pretty good, but hopefully, if not, maybe I'll do a redo of this next week because I did think this article was worth it. And if there's any technical issues, I'll do a redo. But thanks for watching this LinkedIn Live, and I'll be back. Should be back next week with another LinkedIn Live. Thanks, everyone.